Yes, my point is, the little chunk of my agency went out of their way to be really prepared and looked at what we did, how we did it, what can we get rid of, and a lot of the things that were kind of on the improvement or reduce side, we're doing anyway because it made more sense. But I have heard nothing from the government and the Senate and the Assembly about what can agencies do to lessen their bill. And I guess that's real frustrating.
They better be doing it right now, because all these agencies make requests, and it's the book that thick, and there's all the agency requests, and I know one agency in particular, I won't say which one was the smaller, but they wanted a 146% increase. I mean, when you're looking at everything falling in, and to ask for that is outrageous. They're being instructed in each agency, okay, here's you're going to get a cut, and here's where it's going to be. You better start looking. So if they're not doing that, they will be very soon, and they better be, because it's going to happen. I've come from a business world. That's where I've been all my life, and I look at things from a business sense. As a business person, you have to plan for good and you have to plan for bad. Everybody says we have a budget crisis in the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, we got problems. It's not a crisis yet. We're looking at one. We're getting closer and closer. When I had my RV business in Rice Lake in 79, 80, and 81, they were going to outlaw gas for recreational vehicles, anything that had used gas, snowmobiles, motorhomes, campers, I had all those. You're going to outlaw gas, why would you buy one? And then inflation was going nuts, and interest rates skyrocketed, and my floor plan rate went from 8.5% to 21.5% in a little over a year. And I was paying as high as 27% on some of my floor plan. So my revenues dropped by 80%. My cost of doing business tripled. That's a budget crisis. And I survived it. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. We're at that point far less dramatic than that in the state of Wisconsin. Our revenues have been flat. I mean, literally, our revenues are there. We have plenty of tax money coming in. Our spending is out of control. But it's not, like I say, we don't have a drop of revenue by 80%. We don't have a tripling the cost of our doing business. So it's very manageable. This thing is very manageable. Because I've seen it a lot worse in my life. But we have to do it. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful for everybody. The hardest part is that there's always going to be little tweaks here and there where somebody's going to feel like they're getting hit harder than the other, and that's going to happen. I mean, it's impossible to be perfectly fair and perfectly equitable about everything. But it's not going to be easy, and we got to do it. We're all in this boat together, and I would pray to God that every agency is doing the same thing your agency did, because if they aren't doing it, they better start, because they're going to be required to do it. And they're going to be looked at. I mean, just to come in and say, I want a 146% increase in my revenues in a down year like that, a bad economy, that isn't going to fly. They better figure out something that are different than that. And we got some agencies that have been very responsible and come in with intact with their budget request that was reasonable and even lower than the previous year, just because they were very careful about it. And there's a lot of different agencies. There's a large amount of agencies in this state, way more than we need, I'm sure. But they will be required to do it. And if you've been proactive, you're probably going to be a lot better off than they are.
The DNR, like the building coming to Spooner, but to spend $4.5 million to put a building up in Spooner, it's only open 3 days a week. You can't go in there and get a license unless you go in those 3 days. And it's a state-of-the-art green. It makes no sense to me, especially where this state is right now.
Yep, absolutely. And that was one of the first things that I was throwing in my plate, and I did a little research on it, and it's kind of like jumping off a cliff. That thing was already off the cliff. It was in the last budget, and contracts were led, and it's LEED certified. I talked to contractors around here that couldn't bid on it because of the prevailing wage was one of the problems, and the LEED certification was another problem for some of the HVAC contractors. So literally, it's a money pit. It's just a shame. It's great. It's beautiful, but unfortunately, it was water over the cliff already. But we have to look at that. We have to look at that. I looked at the budget proposal here the other day and was going through it, and one of the line items in there was $100 million for energy efficiencies. I don't know what that is, and I don't know where the $100 million is going to come from, but spend $100 million to save 50,000, is that economically feasible? You know, just to ask for $100 million, that's a lot of money. We've got to be careful with that. You're right. And the thing with the DNR says we don't have enough staff, so we can't staff these buildings. Why would you build a brand new one? I know I even talked to some of the DNR people locally here, and they made that same comment. We just did some remodeling to our old building, and now they're going to tear it down. Well, why did you do that? Well, I don't know. I didn't do it, but
That's not 100%.
you know, and
I agree that with the way the economy is right now, that now is not the time to build that building. However, that was submitted and approved when everything was going really good.
Exactly. It's water over the dam.
System right now. And I guess survey understands why we can't staff the building. Well, we're leasing space in 2 other buildings in town for office space because there's not enough room in that building for everybody. And there are other issues with that. And I guess I didn't want to get into kind of part of that because you mentioned the service center only being open 3 days a week. That was done as a cost-saving measure. And I don't know the bottom line. There were several positions overall through attrition and people taking different jobs. I think we only lost a very few people across the state lost their job because of that whole remobilization of the service centers. And maybe it comes out in the wash, but the people that are still in those jobs, I really wonder if we're saving any money. The people that are still in those jobs, even though, say they live in Schooner, they might be here 3 days a week, but those other 2 days a week, they're going to another station. So, because they got to be there in time to open the doors in the morning, they have to leave early, and they're on the clock, going to their job. They get done at the end of the day, they got to stay there after office hours, balance the books, and then come back, so they're working more hours at the end of the day. Plus, they're driving to wherever using a state vehicle, and we're paying mileage for that vehicle. So, are we really saving?
Absolutely.
I don't know. I really wonder if we are, but that was the whole impetus between cutting down the hours of the service centers was to save money and cut positions, and I don't know if we're saving anything.
And that's exactly what happens sometimes. Government is a completely different animal than business. You know, unfortunately, they're very similar, but they tend to be different animals. And I've never been a big fan of government running any enterprise. You know, I've had people that, you know, when healthcare was taken over on the federal level, I said, you know, the track record of the federal government is zero. Every enterprise that the federal government's ever entered into is bankrupted. Post office, Amtrak, you can go right down the line, they're all bankrupt. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And so to continue to have government run these enterprises doesn't make any sense to me. The track record is zero. You got to be careful. But running, you know, and these are functions that the government has to do, you know, with the DNR and different things like that. So we have to be really, really careful and maybe set up mechanisms so it's more of a business model and is run more like a business. Unfortunately, sometimes within different agencies and government officials themselves and elected officials think that the taxpayers are an unlimited pot of money that will never run out. Well, yes, it will, and we're getting to that point. We're getting to critical mass. At some point in time, we have to become more efficient and look at different things like that, and rather than say, well, this would be really nice to have this new building or whatever, we have to look at it more critically. And I'm glad to hear that your agencies are doing that.